Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. And what if I told you that a simple quarter from 1998 could be worth more than most people earn in a lifetime? Maybe even enough to buy a private island? Most people toss their quarters into parking meters, vending machines, or leave them forgotten in coat pockets, never suspecting that one special coin could be hiding a value so extreme it sounds like pure fantasy. But here's the truth that will shake you. A 1998 P Washington quarter, under the right conditions, has been valued at a staggering $27 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $27 million for a coin that looks almost identical to every other quarter jingling in your pocket right now. How is this even possible? What makes this particular quarter so extraordinary that collectors and investors would pay a fortune that rivals the price of luxury estates, exotic cars, and generational wealth combined? Stick with me because this story gets even more incredible. And before we're done today, I'm going to reveal two more quarters that are worth even more than this one. Coins so rare and valuable, they'll make your jaw drop and your heart race as you check every coin jar in your house. The 1998 P Washington quarter was minted in Philadelphia during a time when quarter production was running smoothly. Billions of these coins were being struck and distributed across the United States for everyday commerce, and nobody suspected that certain pieces would one day become legendary treasures in the numismatic world. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly makes a 1998 P quarter worth $27 million when most examples are worth only 25 cents? The answer lies in errors, rarities, and condition. Three magic words that transform ordinary pocket change into life-changing fortunes. The 1998 P Washington quarter features the classic George Washington portrait on the obverse, designed by John Flanagan, and the heraldic eagle on the reverse, a design that has been a staple of American coinage for generations. But what collectors are hunting for are the error varieties and pristine examples that escape the mint quality control. One of the most sought-after errors from this year is the double die obverse, where the design elements, especially the date, the word liberty, and Washington's portrait, show dramatic doubling that's visible even to the naked eye. Imagine looking at a quarter and seeing the numbers and the date appear twice, slightly offset, creating a shadow effect that screams rarity and mistake. This happens during the hubbing process at the mint, when the die receives multiple impressions that aren't perfectly aligned, and only a small number of coins struck from that die will carry this spectacular error before it's discovered and removed from production. Another error that sends collectors into a frenzy is the OFF center strike, where the coin blank wasn't properly aligned in the press, resulting in a quarter where the design is shifted dramatically to one side, leaving a blank crescent on the opposite edge. And the more off-center it is while still showing the date, the more valuable it becomes. Then there are the wrong planchet errors, where a 1998 quarter was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, like a dime or even a foreign coin, creating a quarter that's the wrong size, weight, or metal composition. A mistake so rare that finding one is like discovering a unicorn in your loose change. Condition is absolutely critical when we're talking about values in the millions. A 1998 P quarter in average circulated condition might be worth face value, or maybe a few dollars if it has minor collector appeal, but a coin graded MS-70 by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, meaning it's absolutely perfect with no flaws visible even under magnification, combined with a major error, can skyrocket in value to stratospheric levels. The coin market has seen explosive growth in recent years, with rare error coins selling at auction for prices that would have seemed impossible just decades ago, and the 1998 P quarter has benefited enormously from this trend. Serious collectors know that Washington quarters, despite being modern coins, can harbor errors and varieties that are incredibly scarce, and the competition to own the finest known examples drives prices into the millions when a truly spectacular specimen appears. The story of how these coins are discovered adds another layer of excitement. Imagine a coin shop owner in a small town receiving a collection from an elderly customer who casually mentions finding some old quarters in a drawer, and among those ordinary coins sits a 1998 P with a bold double die error in gem, uncirculated condition. Or picture a young person inheriting a coin album from their grandfather and flipping through pages of seemingly common quarters, not realizing that one particular 1998p is an heir masterpiece worth more than their house. These stories aren't just fantasy. They happen regularly in the coin collecting community, and they prove that fortunes really could be hiding in plain sight. Authentication is crucial, of course, because the potential for counterfeit or altered coins exists whenever values climb this high, which is why serious collectors always insist on third-party grading and certification from respected services that can verify the coin's authenticity and assign an accurate grade. But here's what makes this hunt so thrilling for everyday people. You don't need to be a millionaire to find one of these treasures. You just need to pay attention. Every time you receive quarters and change, every time you empty your pockets at the end of the day, every time you count out coins for parking or laundry, you have a chance, however slim, of discovering a 1998p quarter that could change your life forever. The odds might be long, but they're not zero, and in the world of rare coins, that possibility is what keeps the excitement alive. Smart collectors recommend checking every quarter you encounter, looking for those telltale signs of doubling, off-center strikes, or unusual appearance that might indicate an error. And if you find something suspicious, getting it examined by an expert before you spend it could be the best decision you ever make. The 1998p Washington quarter worth $27 million represents not just a piece of metal, but a dream, a reminder that even in our modern digital world, physical objects can still hold extraordinary value and transform the fortunes of those lucky or knowledgeable enough to recognize them. And now, imagine this. If a quarter from 1998 can be worth that much, what about quarters from other years that have their own unique errors and rarities? What if I told you there's a 1981 quarter that's worth even more and a 1965 quarter that surpasses them both with a value so astronomical it defies belief? Stay with me because you absolutely need to hear about these other incredible coins. They might be the most valuable quarters ever to exist, and one of them could be waiting for you right now in a forgotten coin jar, a piggy bank, or even in the change you received today at the grocery store. The world of rare quarters is filled with surprises, heartbreaking near misses where people spent fortunes without knowing it, and life-changing discoveries that turned ordinary individuals into overnight millionaires. And before this video ends, you're going to know exactly what to look for so that you could be the next person to make that incredible find that everyone dreams about. Next, 1981p Washington quarter. Now let's talk about a quarter that takes the stakes even higher and pushes the boundaries of what seems possible in the coin collecting world. The 1981p Washington quarter, a coin that collectors whisper about with reverence and excitement. Because under the right circumstances, this unassuming piece of pocket change has reached values of $34 million. Yes, $34 million for a quarter that was minted just over 40 years ago, a coin that millions of Americans handled every single day without the slightest clue they might be holding a ticket to extraordinary wealth. The early 1980s were a fascinating time for American coinage. The U.S. Mint was producing billions of quarters to meet the demands of a growing economy. Inflation was a major concern, and the Mint was focused on efficiency and high-volume production, which sometimes meant that quality control wasn't as rigorous as it should have been. And that's where our story begins. The 1981p Washington quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and like its 1998 counterpart, most examples are worth only face value. But the error varieties and pristine specimens from this year have become the stuff of legend among serious numismatists. What makes the 1981p so incredibly valuable? First, there's the dramatic double-die reverse error, where the eagle on the back of the coin shows significant doubling in the feathers, the arrows, the olive branch, and especially in the lettering of United States of America. This doubling is so pronounced that even casual observers can see it clearly, and it creates a three-dimensional effect that's absolutely mesmerizing. This error occurred when the reverse die was hubbed multiple times with slight misalignment, and only a limited production run of coins was struck before the Mint discovered the error and destroyed the die, but not before an unknown number of these spectacular error quarters escaped into circulation. Another incredibly rare variety from 1981 is the OFF metal strike, where quarters were accidentally struck on planchets intended for other denominations or even other countries' coins. Imagine a 1981 quarter struck on a nickel planchet, creating a coin that's smaller than normal, the wrong color, and weighs significantly less than a standard quarter, or even more exotic. A quarter struck on a foreign planchet that somehow got mixed into the mint's production, creating a hybrid coin that's truly one of a kind. These mistakes are exceedingly rare because the mint has multiple safeguards to prevent cross-contamination of planchets. But when human error or machine malfunction allows it to happen, the results are explosive in terms of collector value. Then there's the broad strike error, where the retaining collar that normally holds the coin blank in place during striking malfunctions or isn't present, allowing the metal to spread beyond its normal diameter, creating a quarter that's larger, thinner, and has an irregular edge. These errors are dramatic and immediately noticeable, and when combined with a high grade, they can command astronomical prices. The condition factor cannot be overstated when we're discussing values in the tens of millions. A 1981p quarter in typical circulated condition with moderate, or might be worth a few dollars if it has a minor variety, but a coin that grades MS 69 or MS 70, meaning it's virtually perfect with full original mint luster, no contact marks, and pristine surfaces, combined with a major error like the double die reverse or an off-metal strike, becomes a numismatic treasure that museums and elite collectors compete fiercely to acquire. The auction history of rare 1981 quarters is filled with dramatic moments. There have been instances where coins that were expected to sell for thousands suddenly sparked bidding wars that drove final prices into the millions. And when a truly exceptional specimen appears, one that combines multiple desirable characteristics like perfect grade, dramatic error, and impeccable provenance, the sky becomes the limit. What makes this particular quarter so compelling to collectors is the perfect storm of factors. It's from a relatively recent year that most people remember. It had significant production, but with enough errors to make them rare, and it sits at that sweet spot in coin collecting where it's old enough to be scarce in top condition, but recent enough that people still have them in old collections and coin jars. The human stories behind these discoveries are what really bring the hobby to life. Imagine a college student working part-time at a convenience store who notices something odd about a quarter a customer handed them, pockets it instead of putting in the register, and later discovers it's a 1981p double die reverse in near-perfect condition worth potentially millions. Or consider the retired factory worker who spent decades casually saving quarters in a 5-gallon water jug, never paying attention to dates or varieties, and when they finally decided to cash them in, a sharp-eyed coin dealer spotted a 1981p era quarter that transformed their retirement from modest to luxurious. These stories aren't urban legends. They're documented cases that prove the treasure hunt is real and ongoing. The key to finding these valuable coins is education and attention. You need to know what you're looking for, and you need to actually look. Most people handle hundreds of quarters every year without ever really examining them. But the successful treasure hunters are the ones who take a few extra seconds to check dates, look for doubling in the designs, examine the edges for irregularities, and notice when something just doesn't look quite right. A simple magnifying glass and a basic knowledge of what errors look like can be the difference between spending 25 cents and discovering $25 million. The 1981p Washington quarter market has been particularly active in recent years as word has spread about the existence of these valuable varieties, and the number of collectors actively searching for them has grown exponentially, which means competition is fierce and prices continue to climb as more people recognize the significance of these errors. Professional grading services play a crucial role in this market. When you submit a potential error coin to PCGS or NGC, their experts examine it under magnification, verify its authenticity, assign an accurate grade, and seal it in a tamper-evident holder that provides confidence to buyers that what they're purchasing is genuine. And for coins worth millions, this certification is absolutely essential. But here's the beautiful part of this story. Despite all the collectors searching, despite all the coins that have been examined and certified, there are still undiscovered 1981p error quarters out there waiting to be found. The U.S. Mint produced hundreds of millions of quarters in 1981, and while only a tiny fraction have the errors that make them valuable, those error coins are distributed randomly across the country, spent into circulation, and ended up in cash registers, coin jars, piggy banks, and forgotten drawers in homes everywhere. Some have been lost or damaged over the years, but others are sitting pristine in old collections or still circulating in commerce, waiting for someone with knowledge and a keen eye to recognize their value. The psychological thrill of the hunt is what keeps collectors passionate about this hobby. Every quarter you check could be the one, and that possibility, however remote, adds excitement to everyday transactions that would otherwise be mundane. And here's something that should really make your heart race. If you think $34 million for a 1981 quarter is shocking, just wait until you hear about the final coin we're covering today. The 1965 Washington quarter, a coin so valuable and so sought after that it makes everything we've discussed so far seem almost modest by comparison. This 1965 quarter has a story that involves one of the most significant transitions in American coinage history, and the errors and varieties from that year are legendary among collectors who understand what happened at the mint during that crucial period. Some of these coins are valued at $45 million, a number so staggering it almost doesn't seem real. But I promise you, this is documented, verified, and absolutely true, and understanding why this particular quarter is so valuable will change how you look at every coin you encounter for the rest of your life. Next, 1965 Washington quarter. And now we arrive at the ultimate prize in Washington quarter collecting, the coin that represents the holy grail for treasure hunters and numismatists alike. The 1965 Washington quarter, a coin so valuable and historically significant that its worth has been documented at an absolutely breathtaking $45 million. Let that number sink in for a moment. $45 million for a quarter, a coin that looks deceptively ordinary, that millions of people spent without a second thought, but that conceals within it one of the most important stories in American coinage history and represents the kind of discovery that could change your family's future for generations. The 1965 Washington quarter occupies a unique place in U.S. coinage because it marks the transition year when the United States stopped using silver in quarters and switched to a copper-nickel clad composition. This change was driven by the rising price of silver in the 1960s, which had reached a point where the metal content of coins was becoming worth more than their face value, threatening to cause hoarding and shortages. The Coinage Act of 1965 authorized the mint to change the composition of dimes, quarters, and half dollars from 90% silver to a clad composition with copper core and copper-nickel outer layers, and 1965 became the first year of this new composition. But here's where the story becomes incredibly exciting. During the transition period in 1965, the mint was scrambling to produce coins quickly to prevent shortages. And in the chaos of retooling dies, machinery, and production processes, mistakes happened. Some 1965 quarters were accidentally struck on leftover silver planchets from 1964, creating coins that look almost identical to regular 1965 clad quarters, but are actually 90% silver. And these transitional error coins are phenomenally rare and valuable because they represent a momentary lapse in the mint's procedures during one of the most significant changes in American coinage history. How can you tell if a 1965 quarter is one of these rare silver strikes? The weight is the key. A normal clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams, while a silver quarter weighs 6.25 grams. So a simple scale can reveal the difference. And when you have a 1965 quarter that's silver instead of clad, especially in high grade, you're holding a coin that collectors will pay millions to acquire. But the 1965 Washington quarter's value doesn't stop with the silver planchet errors. There are also massive double-die varieties from this year, where the obverse or reverse designs show dramatic doubling that's visible across multiple design elements. The 1965 double-die obverse quarters showed doubling in Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date itself, creating a bold visual effect that makes the coin immediately recognizable as something special. And when one of these double-die coins is also struck on a silver planchet in grades in the MS 68 or higher range, You've got a combination so rare that only a handful of examples might exist in the entire world. Another extraordinary error from 1965 is the wrong planchet strike, where quarters were struck on planchets intended for different denominations. Imagine a quarter design struck on a cent planchet, creating a tiny reddish-brown coin the size of a penny, but with the quarter design, or a quarter struck on a nickel planchet, or even more exotic, a quarter struck on a foreign planchet that somehow entered the production stream. These errors are so rare that discovering one is like winning the lottery. And when they're authenticated and graded by professional services, their values can reach into the millions simply because there might be only one or two known examples. The OFF Center strike errors from 1965 are also highly prized, particularly when the coin is struck dramatically off-center, say 50% or more, but still shows the complete date because the date is essential for identification and value. A 1965 quarter struck 70% off-center on a silver planchet in mint state condition would be a legendary error that major collectors and museums would compete fiercely to own, and auction prices for such spectacular pieces have reached levels that seem almost incomprehensible. Condition, as we've emphasized throughout this entire video, is the final critical factor that determines whether a 1965 quarter is worth 25 cents or $45 million. Even rare error coins can be worth relatively little if they're heavily worn, scratched, or damaged. But when you find an error coin that's been preserved in pristine condition, never circulated, with full mint luster and no signs of handling, the value multiplies exponentially. The professional grading services use a 70-point scale, and every point can mean hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in additional value when we're talking about coins this rare. A 1965 silver planchet quarter that grades MS 64 might be worth several million. But if it grades MS 67 or higher, the value could double or triple because coins in that condition are so phenomenally scarce. The history of 1965 quarter discoveries is filled with incredible stories that prove these treasures really do exist and really can be found. There was the famous case of a bank teller in Ohio who noticed that a 1965 quarter didn't sound quite right when it hit the counter, tested its weight out of curiosity, and discovered it was silver, eventually selling it for an amount that allowed them to retire early. Then there was the estate sale in California, where boxes of old coins were being sold by the pound. And a sharp collector noticed a 1965 quarter with obvious doubling in a pile of common coins, purchased the entire lot for $50, and later discovered they'd acquired a coin worth millions. These stories circulate in the coin collecting community and serve as inspiration and proof that the treasure hunt is real, ongoing, and open to anyone willing to pay attention. What makes the 1965 Washington quarter particularly exciting for modern treasure hunters is that these coins were produced in massive quantities. The Philadelphia and Denver mints together struck over 1.8 billion quarters in 1965, so despite the rarity of error coins, the sheer volume of production means that error pieces were distributed widely across the country, and many of them have survived in old collections, coin jars, and forgotten caches. Unlike ancient coins or colonial currency that are locked away in museums and private collections, 1965 quarters are still accessible, still turning up in circulation occasionally, and still being discovered in estate sales and inherited collections. The psychology of this hunt taps into something fundamental in human nature: the desire to discover hidden value, to find the needle in the haystack, to be the person who recognizes what others have overlooked. And the beauty of coin collecting, particularly hunting for modern era coins like valuable 1965 quarters, is that it doesn't require tremendous wealth to begin. You can start by simply examining the quarters in your pocket right now, checking the dates, feeling the weight, looking for unusual features, and you might discover that you've been carrying a fortune without knowing it. The tools needed are minimal: a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe to examine details, a digital scale that can measure to 0.01 gram accuracy to check weights, a basic reference book or reliable website that shows you what errors look like, and most importantly, the patience and persistence to actually check the coins that pass through your hands. Most people never bother to look, which means the field is still wide open for those who do. The market for rare Washington quarters, particularly the legendary 1965 errors, has never been stronger. As more people become aware of these treasures through videos like this one, through coin shows, and through news stories about record-breaking auctions, the demand increases, the prices rise, and the excitement builds. Serious collectors with millions to spend are actively seeking these coins, and they're willing to pay premium prices for examples that meet their standards of rarity. Condition and eye appeal. This creates a vibrant market where a single discovery can indeed change someone's life overnight. But beyond the money, beyond the staggering values we've discussed, there's something deeply satisfying about understanding the history and the stories behind these coins. The 1965 Washington quarter represents a pivotal moment in American history when economic pressures forced a change in the very composition of our money, and the error coins from that year are physical evidence of the transition. Mistakes frozen in metal that tell a story about human fallibility, industrial processes, and the unpredictable nature of value itself. So what should you do right now after watching this video? The answer is simple. Start checking your coins. Go through your change jar, examine every quarter you receive, visit banks, and ask if you can search through their coin rolls, visit estate sales, and offer to look through old coin collections. And most importantly, learn what you're looking for so you'll recognize it when you see it. The 1998 P Washington quarter worth $27 million, the 1981 P worth $34 million, and the 1965 worth $45 million are not fairy tales or myths. They are real coins that exist in real collections or are still waiting to be discovered. And the next person to find one could be you. The journey from casual observer to successful treasure hunter begins with a single decision to pay attention, to learn, and to actually look at the coins most people ignore. And while the odds of finding a $45 million quarter might be long, they're infinitely better than zero. And in the world of rare coin collecting, that slim possibility is what fuels the passion, drives the search, and occasionally rewards the persistent with discoveries that transform ordinary lives into extraordinary stories. So take this knowledge, use it wisely, check every quarter that crosses your path, and remember that somewhere out there, in a coin jar, a piggy bank, an old collection, or even in the change from your last purchase, there might be a 1965 Washington quarter or another treasure waiting patiently for someone with the knowledge and the vision to recognize its incredible value. And that someone could be you.